the Maryland Restorative Justice Initiative has been seeking removal of the governor from the parole process.
So these are individuals that can be contributors to our society.
Then we need to do something with them besides warehouse them at $25,000, $26,000 a year. Simple as that.
Maryland is one of the very few states that the parole commission doesn't control when it makes decisions about inmates.
And when you've paid your dues to society, you have a right to go back, have a life, move forward.
And here's why Executive Director Walter Lomax is so passionate about unblocking the exit for so many prisoners.
There's a call that I use, and if they come down, they know that that's treat time.
68-year-old Walter Lomax tends to his horses on the Lomax farm.
Let's go whoop, whoop, and they come right down to the pastures. They're very friendly animals.
On his 100-acre farm in King George, Virginia, he also has chickens, sheep, and donkeys.
This keeps me humble, working around these animals.
He once thought this life was inconceivable.
This wasn't something that I dreamt about. It's definitely been a long road.
Because his road wasn't always this peaceful. At the age of 10, he moved from the farmlands of Virginia to the mean streets of Baltimore.
Boy, I had a touch of the bright lights.
In his teens, Lomax committed crimes from car theft to assault.
I certainly was an angel.
He says he was functionally illiterate.
It was once said that I had achieved my master's degree in streetology while obtaining a PhD in survival.
More focused on city life than education.
Documents from the school system basically saying he was uneducable, he had a 70 IQ, he was illiterate.
In 1968, the year of Baltimore's largest riots, he was arrested for murder. Police said the 21-year-old shot a grocery store manager in the head during a robbery.
I knew I had committed the crimes to be there.
Jim Mikulski investigated Lomax's case and describes the perpetrator.
He came back into the store, and that's when the robbery occurred. He started acting very strangely along one of the shelves. The manager, Mr. Brewster, came out and questioned him, and he pulled out a gun and shot him right in the heart.
Lomax says the man described wasn't him, and he insisted he was innocent.
At that time, I was naive enough to think that they would find the person who committed the crime, that I would be let go.
But he was convicted anyway and sentenced to life in prison.
May have wound up there eventually for something anyway, but certainly not for the crime that I was convicted of committing.
Baltimore City Judge Gail Raisin was skeptical.
This was a case with no physical evidence that relied entirely on the testimony of 5 so-called eyewitnesses who were white, with a perpetrator who was African American.
He remembers his first days in prison.
I stayed in that cell. It was one of the most horrible experiences I've ever had in my life.
Lomax ended up serving 39 years of his life behind bars.
I never stopped telling people that I was innocent, and I never stopped acting like I was innocent. And eventually people began to believe that there must be something to what I was saying.
And his family members never stopped believing in him either.
Everybody knew. Everybody in the whole family knew he was innocent.
His sister, Audrey Bryce, says their family didn't have any money to have a good lawyer.
We always knew that our brother didn't do it, and he had to spend his whole entire life in prison.
Lomax realized he would have to do the work to get himself out.
And so rather than to be angry or bitter, I just set out about the chance of trying to get myself out of prison. It took me a long time.
A long time because he had to learn about the legal system. He earned his GED and associate's degree while incarcerated.
He taught himself to read. He became editor of the Division of Corrections magazine. He's incredibly well read. He writes essays, poems.
And as the years went on, he learned about the law, and he began to work with Centurion Ministries, a not-for-profit that helps innocent men.
And then he's basically standing in line with his ticket for parole, and that was snatched away from him.
And in 2006, Judge Raisin reopened his case with new evidence. The new investigation found that Lomax's right hand was injured prior to the shooting, rendering him unable to actually fire the murder weapon. There were also allegations that the police concocted evidence and withheld evidence framing Lomax for this murder.
It's highly unusual to succeed, to have it reopened.
Lomax was released from prison.
I would be still incarcerated had the evidence of my innocence not been uncovered.
But that wrongful murder conviction remained on his record until today.
And in 2014, he prevailed under a petition of actual innocence. The court dismissed all charges.
With the court's decision today, I literally actually feel free after almost a half a century.
His sister, Carol Lomax, his strongest supporter, who passed away in 2015, was elated.
See, God had his arms around me, and I knew God had his arms around him. I know he didn't do it.
Her daughter, Linda Lomax, knew the significance of that day to her mom and her uncle.
And, you know, I realized when Uncle Walter was exonerated, and I keep going back to that picture. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I know it is. I go back to that picture of her at the courthouse, and she was sick. You could see the weight loss and everything, and she was sick. But she was at that courthouse, you know, supporting him.
Lomax finally had his chance at freedom.
So his expectations had to be pretty low that he would ever get his freedom. But his motto has been, never give in, never give up. And it worked. He prevailed.
Now he lobbies for reforming parole, visits prisoners, and advocates for prison reform.
It's better to be prepared for the long run.
Traveling nearly 2 hours each way from Virginia to Baltimore.
Making that drive, I may have been placed in a situation that I was placed in order to learn the lesson that I needed to learn in order to come out and do this work.
The man who has pushed that bill a great deal from the outside is Walter Lomax, who's project director of the Maryland Restorative Justice Initiative, a program of fusion partnerships, who served many years in prison for something he didn't do and has dedicated his life to making things better here since he's been back in the outside. Good to have you back in the studio, Walter Lomax.
Thank you. I'm glad. Thanks for inviting me back, Mark. We're talking about people who served 25, 30, 40, in some cases more than that are just languishing in prison, warehousing, wasting our taxpayers' dollars.
Now Lomax walks the halls of the State House talking with legislators about the need for reform.
To see him here in Annapolis trying to change the laws to make other people's lives better and easier, and help some of those that, again, may have been in the same situation that he was in, absolutely innocent.
He rallies and has testified to lawmakers for the removal of the governor from signing off on parole for lifers.
The reality is the majority of these individuals, if given a meaningful opportunity, that they will, at the very least, deserve that.
Lomax continues to educate youth on the prison system at a class in Towson University.
A lot of the problems that exist in Maryland's prison specifically is a direct result of the elimination of rehabilitative programs and the self-help programs.
His family and friends understand his passion for the work.
And of course, I had no idea what he was going to do with his life, and nobody could have predicted what he has done and accomplished.
He's doing the work that God would want him to do, you know, so he brought him here and he's given back in so many ways.
On his farm, he reads from one of the 2 books he wrote about his life.
Being an innocent man, I sometimes find it difficult to imagine how someone could be incarcerated for so long without being vindicated. However, when I think about the tragedy of my situation, I'm reminded of how many other innocent people may have been put to death.
He says he always knew he wouldn't die in prison, that his life now has purpose it never did before.
When I do meet my demise, hopefully I've been able to fulfill the destiny that was laid out for me to do. I was there as a part of a plan that was much far bigger than, you know, who I am as an individual.
Reporting from King George, I'm Valerie Young.
name is Walter Lomax, and thank you for listening to my story. When Valerie and I met, it was because of this report that we produced, Still Blocking the Exit. And I thought that would be the extent of what the interview was about. But when a teacher learned about my personal story, he decided that would be a more interesting project for her grade. And so we wound up doing some aspects of my story. However, the backdrop of the work that we do is because of this report, Still Blocking the Exit. When we produced a documentary in 2011, Blocking the Exit, we thought then that it was enough information to get the legislation passed that we were seeking. However, the legislation that was passed didn't go far enough in 2011, and we thought then, as we think now, that until or unless politics is really removed from that equation, that people that are serving these parole-eligible life sentences will always be held in prison, because it's a political liability for any governor. It is simply something that shouldn't be a part of that process. And the reason being is that when that policy was initially established, where the governor would be the final say on people that's to be released that are serving parole-eligible life sentences, there was less than maybe 200 people that were serving parole-eligible life sentences at the time. Now we have over 2,300, 26 counting those that are serving suspended life sentences. And what has happened over the years, rather than individuals being released as a result of earning their way out of prison, they are being held in prison for political concerns.
We're talking about individuals who are 60, 65, 70. They're not out on the street ripping and running anymore. They're not a danger to society. And this was determined by the parole board. Again, who has all the tools. They vet the whole process. So these are individuals that can be contributors to our society.
There's a big difference between life without parole and life. And life does give a chance for parole. In light of the fact that our parole board are the ones that are more, they have more information about the cases, they are the ones who are following it, I think it's almost irrelevant for it to be based on a governor's decision.
But those who have met the burden, paid the price, done their time, who've been in jail for 20, 30, 40 years, who studies upon studies, the Pew Research Foundation have shown that they're no longer a threat to society, then we need to do something with them besides warehouse them at $25,000, $26,000 a year. As simple as that. Well, part of what we're doing is trying to make it easier for the parole process to exist. In other states where this has happened, there's been a marked decrease in the number of folks who have had to be in prison. They've actually been able to either close branches of prisons or close prisons altogether, which means economic savings. And I think this is part of what the governor may want to look at. And it certainly would happen in some of the other states.
Absolutely.
Maryland actually is one of the worst states in the country when it comes to the rate at which we have juvenile lifers.
Well, certainly one thing I do know is that Maryland is one of the very few states that the parole commission doesn't control when it makes decisions about inmates. For some reason here in Maryland, the governor has a very strong hand, and he makes a decision whether a person is paroled or not.
With the relationship of being tough on crime, I don't see any future governors changing that position, and consequently, I think in order to depoliticize the issue, you need to take the governor out of the process.
When one of the perpetrators showed me so much compassion and remorse, I could do nothing but forgive him. Since this happened, I've been a constant speaker at the prison with Life for Women and Men, so I've come to know a lot of them, and I changed my perspective.
What we're able to demonstrate with the cases that's profiled in this report, Still Blocking the Exit, is that well over 90-some people have been released already back into the community since 2013. And they're all making successful transitions back into the community. And these are some of the very people that we've been advocating on behalf of for years, to say that if they were to be released back into the community, that one is that they would not be a threat to public safety, and that they would make successful transitions. And to date, again, since 2013, well over 90 of them have been released so far, and not one of them had recidivism.
This is a very important issue for Maryland. It's an issue that impacts everyone, even whether you have someone in prison or not, because it's a financial issue, it's an issue of human rights. Many of these prisoners have served very long-term sentences. They've done all the time that they need to do. They have changed their lives, and they deserve to come home. Many of them are older and facing health issues. So it's really an urgent thing, and we've tried a number of years now to pass legislation in Annapolis to take the governor out of that process, and we're getting really close, and I know we're going to pass that legislation. So it's really important for people to get involved in the movement, join the movement, and learn about this issue, to educate other people that you know so they're aware of it, and then come with us to Annapolis, write letters to your congressman and others, or join and become a volunteer with the Maryland Restorative Justice Initiative, as we are also supporting the men and women who are coming home and they will be released when this legislation happens. So thank you very much for your interest and support, and join the movement.
Whether it's organizing family members and friends, organizing the prisoners that are still on the inside, as well as educating the public and legislators to this issue. And all we are asking for, is just a fair shot at this.